variable graph. You don't remember?
Yeah, it's straight across. Is this per unit?
Yes, sir. This is per unit.
Fixed?
Fixed. Yes, sir.
Yes. Curve?
Yes. There we are. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Mr. Musgrave, not here. Ashton. What is variable cost on a per unit basis? Straight along. And this is where your cheat sheets become helpful, doesn't it? Yes, it is. This is where cheat sheets become helpful. When Dr. Fessler asks something that you know you've got on your cheat sheet, you can kind of cheat, if you will, and not shuffle through all the pages in your book, but do that, okay? Now, okay. Let's look at, what's the next page say? Does it say just types of costs? We're not going to give you 4 more graphs. I'm just going to give you one, actually. Well, what's the page after that say? I want a relevant range, okay? There are notes in the handy, is this a page there's notes on the handy handouts that talk about committed and non-committed fixed costs? There we are. Look down at the bottom, so that's important on that page. Committed fixed costs are associated with investments in plant and equipment and are difficult to adjust. You know, particularly big things like that can be difficult to sell. So when you buy them, you're in there for the long haul. Same with a bank. Build a bank, and what else can you use a bank for? It's usually, I mean, because they got safes and just the way they're constructed, it's difficult to use a bank building as anything else other than a bank building. And then discretionary are more things like, you know, commitments to advertising for a year. You know, an advertising contract that a company might make with a professional soccer team in England. You know, they can re-up that or re-down it, you know, kind of get into it and out of it on an annual basis. Yes, ma'am.
What page are you?
I'm looking at,
See the-
159.
Okay.
Dr. Fessler's handy notes. The second one might include, you know, they're more discretionary because you can get out of them after a fairly short period of time, like a year.
You said like that.
Like if you're familiar with English, foreign, soccer teams, actually around the world, professional soccer teams tend to wear a business logo on their chest. And so that's a, you know, for some of those companies, they're just in that for a year or two. And then they can advertise that way for a year or two and then decide if they want to continue that or not. Okay? And so those are examples of that. And then I'm going to go to relevant range, actually. So let's look at the relevant range page. And I am going to draw another graph. And I hear a big yawn, which probably wasn't loud enough to be picked up on the mic, but, you know, I heard it. What's this look like? There's a lot of people missing today, a lot of people. Armando, what's this look like? If you had to take a stab at it. Perfect. Step fixed cost. Relevant range. What page is the relevant range on? The next page. Page 160. So this is actually kind of page 160, what's the relevant range? But I kind of talk about the relevant range in the context of step fixed cost. Why is it step fixed and not step variable? More or less because of the size of the steps. The steps look pretty big, pretty wide. So it's step fixed. But what happens when I do this? Watch what I'm going to do here. And I didn't do a very good job of drawing those black lines because they should be touching the orange. Okay. Now, if I ask you, Megan, if I ask you to define this, the cost between those two orange lines, what is that? It's on the board. Ah, that's a good question. Thank you. Yes. In total it is. So what is in between the orange lines, what is that area? What would you describe that area as? It's supposed to be really easy. What's the top left? Fixed. It's a fixed, because it's just between the orange lines, we just have a fixed costs, right? So if the graph were just between if it just showed this area, this would be a fixed cost. There we go. So if the graph just displayed the area between those orange lines, it would be a fixed costs. And so suppose, another way to say that would be, suppose the relevant range were just the area between those orange lines. Suppose the relevant range were just that area between the orange lines. And so the relevant range is the range, the definition officially is the range over which cost relations hold true. The range over which the cost relations hold true. Okay, the range over which cost relations hold true, which is kind of vague, but this tells you, if the relevant range it's just a conceptual notion. If the relevant range is the area between the two orange lines, that's a fixed cost. If the relevant range is the entire area of that graph, it no longer is just a fixed cost, it becomes a step fixed cost, okay? So it's just the range over which those cost relationships hold true, okay? It's a conceptual notion. So it's important, and it's just helping you realize that all these graphs have an implied relevant range, right? They have an implied relevant range, which is from, actually all of these go from the origin to a particular volume level, but in theory, particularly for the fixed costs, there could be higher fixed cost levels at higher volume levels that are off this chart, if you will, okay? So far, so good. Now let's go to we're going to look at the next page. Yep, the next page, page 161. So you can ponder that page as I erase the board. In theory, it can apply to all of them, but it's easiest to see conceptually with the fixed costs. Okay. In theory, it should apply, but it's just harder to come up with examples for the other ones. Well, I mean, really, it's variable or fixed costs. It's much easier to come up with examples for the fixed